So sorry for the difficulties. But we are here to talk about 8 ways that you can build trust with your team so that you can the avoid the Great Recession, excuse me, the Great Resignation. You can see I'm a little bit distracted by the technical difficulties, and Jeannie, you still can't hear me.
I can't hear you, but I know you can hear me.
So, folks, the first thing that I wanted to share, something that you can do now, something that you can start doing this week. This week that's coming up, it's Friday today. Have weekly one-on-ones with your team. And I know you've heard about one-on-ones, you've heard about them, maybe you're even having them. So I want to enforce or reinforce the importance of one-on-one conversations, one-on-one meetings with every single person who reports to you. Uh, they should be calendared, not catch as catch can, calendared, because they show your direct report that this conversation, this opportunity for the two of you to get together is sacred. And because it's sacred, uh, that communicates to them the importance that you place on them. And when you tell somebody with your actions that they are important, then that breeds their trust. And these meetings, by the way, one-on-one meetings, when they are at their best, are about relationships. They're not about any of the specifics of your work life. They are about the relationship that you have with that direct. And so if you're having these weekly, calendared, sacred, that don't easily get rescheduled and never get canceled, if you're having these meetings weekly, then you're communicating this level of value and you're making it about the relationship. And so when you make it about the relationship, you are also building this sense of trust and building a relationship. So if somebody is considering being a part of this Great Resignation, they're considering resigning, then there's not just the cost of leaving this job, there's also the cost of leaving this intimate relationship with you that they have been building. And so that makes it that much more difficult for them to decide that this job is not something that they want to hang on to, because this job is not just the things that they do and the people that they work with. It's also this tremendous leader that they are working with. So 30 minutes every week, calendared, sacred time that is about the relationship. And the last piece that I'll add to this is your direct report goes first in these meetings. So your direct goes first. That is point number one that I wanted to make for you. This is we promised 8 strategies, or eight tactics, 8 things you can do to build trust and avoid the Great Resignation. So there you go. Jeannie has asked to be added, so hopefully she can hear us. Um, Adrian Chenault says one-on-ones are key. Uh, the other thing is that you have to have them, you need to honor them even when you're busy as a boss. And so, one objection that you have, I'm sure, is I don't have time. I don't have time for these one on ones. Well, either you've got too many direct reports. And by the way, if you've got more than 6 or maximum 8, your effectiveness as a manager starts to plummet after 8, even if you are a great manager. Or you don't understand how much time conducting these one-on-ones is gonna buy back for you. Jeannie, can you hear me? We Jeannie still cannot hear. So uh, even if I swap spots with Jeannie, I bet she still can't hear me. So Adrian says, if you want triage help with audio on the side, give me a call. That's very generous, Adrian. I'm going to show that comment so that Jeannie can grab your phone number. Um, so that is tactic number 1 for building trust with your team so that you can dodge the Great Resignation, have these one-on-ones and have them in the way that we are describing here. And thank you, Adrian, for chiming in and for your kind offer of support. Number 2, running performance reviews. And I don't mean running performance reviews. I mean performance reviews that are running, that are ongoing, because one of the great stressors to people in their jobs is not knowing how they're doing. I was just speaking this morning with a chair, a Vistage chair, who runs a group, a Vistage group. If you're not familiar with that, it's a CEO's peer group, and she says people need to know what their job is. They need to know on a regular basis, on an ongoing basis, what is expected of them, and they need to know how they are doing. And so often in our companies, there's an annual review process, and that is the only time that people are given any kind of real intimate assessment of their performance and how their boss feels about their performance. I can tell you that many times in my career, many times in my career, I have only ever gotten input on how I'm doing in any kind of global sense, except rather than just like, how did you do on this task? How am I feeling about you as an employee? I only got that once a year. And it creates a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety for people. And so, if you want to hang on to your people, then better than the ambiguity, better than the mystery, even is, hey, you're not meeting my expectations, and here's the gap that you need to close. That level of real time feedback is so important. Otherwise, it's like trying to drive down the freeway with your eyes closed. If the target is that my boss is happy with my performance, then it's hard to know whether your boss is overall happy with your performance unless your boss is telling you. So if you are leading an organization, it's not only important to do this with your direct reports, to let your direct reports know how they are doing. It's also absolutely critical to have your direct reports tell their direct reports how they are doing. And depending on how many layers in your organization there are, every single manager in your organization has to be responsible for ongoingly letting everybody in the organization, everybody who reports to them, know how are you doing overall? Are you meeting my expectations? Are you exceeding my expectations? And if you're not quite meeting my expectations, then by how
Testing
much
1, 2. Yes, and that's
are
what it
you
was doing
missing them?
before. Now it says default,
So
audio
now we
input
can hear
default.
Jeannie, and it sounds like Jeannie still can't hear us. So that is an incredibly important piece of building respect, building trust with your people so that they will stick around, is letting them know how they are doing on an ongoing basis. The third thing that I wanted to share with you, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk to Jeannie sooner or later. The third thing is to know, to respect, and to actively support your employees' medium term goals. You might know that eventually your employee wants to start their own business. That's like 10 years down the line. They're here to get experience. So, Jeannie, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Woohoo! I can hear you too. And if it's possible for you to put on headphones, that'd be great because I'm hearing an echo of myself a little bit.
Um, Now you're asking me to put headphones on?
If you can.
Uh,
And if
let's
not,
don't
then
do
we'll just go
that.
with the echo. Let's stick with that.
Can you see me? Because I'm not seeing my video
Yeah,
now.
click start virtual camera on OBS, and I'm sure we will see you.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
So, Jeannie, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. What
Thank
you've
you. Thank
missed,
you. Oh my goodness, right?
is I recommended to the folks at home that they be conducting weekly calendared sacred one-on-ones of 30 minutes with all of their direct reports focused on relationship, building the relationship. That's the purpose of the one-on-one. I also shared with the folks at home, and for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to the review. That running performance reviews, the idea that you should know, Jeannie, if you report to me, you should know every day of the week, essentially how you're doing, because otherwise, it's just this mystery. And I remember a CEO telling me once, my people know that they're doing well when they don't hear from me.
Oh,
And that is a recipe for resentment and stress.
Aaron, you've heard me say how many times communicate, communicate, communicate. You cannot communicate enough, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And I've always told my leaders for the last 30 years, if you don't tell them what's going on, they create it. And nine and a half out of 10 times, it's not what you had. It's 10 times worse than what you really could have communicated to them.
Yeah,
They go to
we
the
have a
dark side.
negativity bias, right?
Oh
Every
my
single one of
God,
us
yes.
has
Yes.
what neuroscientists call a negativity bias. And so every time you look at the floor, if you're not sharing what's actually in your mind, the fact that you looked on the floor means you're terribly disappointed in me. Not that you noticed that your shoe's untied. It means that you're terribly disappointed in me.
Right? They do. They definitely go to the dark side and the negative. So communicate, have meetings, have scheduled one-on-ones with them at a regular time each week so they can plan for it. What
Yes.
I've worked with my leaders, and when they said, "Well, it doesn't make sense. I don't have time for all these meetings." The reality is, you have more time when you have a scheduled event, even if it's 30 minutes or just 40 minutes one-on-one with each staff member, because they save all those times where they come in, hey, do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? Do you have a minute? They save it up for their week, their weekly appointment. So you actually end up having more time on your calendar.
So much yes. So much yes. I want to take a moment and just say thank you, Adrian Chanel. You are a gem.
Oh my God, I can't thank you enough. What a kind soul. Thank you.
CEO of Contact Mapping. He helps you Google your brain in terms of all the relationships that we're all trying to keep sorted. A Contact Mapping is a very cool app that I use. So
I love it. Thank you,
thank you,
Adrian.
Adrian. So Jeannie, I've gotten through two of the thoughts that I wanted to share. Why don't we hear one from you?
Okay, all right. So, the one that was at the top of my list, I think I'm going to save to the end. One of mine was connect with staff personally and professionally, get to know the whole person. And you had touched on that, like making the connection, working with them, getting to know them. And it's so important. It's not just about the job these days. And the reason that people are, signing up for this great resignation left and right. I mean, every day I'm seeing posts of people saying, hey, today's my last day after 15 years at this organization, and it's bittersweet, but it's time for me to go. I'm seeing it more so than ever before. And the reason is they don't feel a sense of belonging. They don't feel they're connected. And it's more than just, hey, what's on your to-do list for work? It's who are you as a human? Like Aaron, when you and I talk, we start out with, hey, what's going on? How's your week? And it's not about what do we have going on in our business. It's about who we are as a person. And I think that's really important for people to get to know their staff members, the whole person. And it only works when trust is established, because they're not going to tell you. And they're not going to tell you until they trust you about what's going on. The
Yeah.
beauty is once a connection is established and your staff trusts you and they know you trust them, that's the other side of it. You have to trust them, right? I've had managers tell me that I don't want to even ask them what's going on at home because it's going to be a 3-hour discussion. Not true. Not true. When you get to know them, you can say really quickly, like, hey, I heard you had an issue with your dog last week. How's he doing? It could be like a 30-second to like a 2-minute conversation, and they feel the love. They feel like you care. It's
It's
really
such an
important to get to know them.
it's such an important point. And Jeannie, maybe I've mentioned to you, and certainly folks who follow me for any length of time on LinkedIn have heard me talk about conventional unwisdom. Right? There's the conventional wisdom that we all are faced with all the time that, in my view, is really unwise. And one piece of conventional unwisdom is the idea you've got to leave it at the door. Right? Which is not to say that we don't have to take whatever we're struggling with at home and put it down. It's just that we don't put it down outside the door, put it down inside the door. You're talking about this check in. One of the things that I find incredibly valuable is at the beginning of any meeting, just having everybody check in briefly. Here's where I'm at. And just naming, here's where I'm at. Man, like my head is hurting. Here's where I'm at. my dog is sick. Just the naming of the fact helps us put it down and bring all of our focus to the present moment.
Absolutely. I love that. Name the feeling, name what's going on, and now let's focus on what we have to do. So, say, for example, you go around the room and I say, you know what? I was running, I had so many things going on, I didn't get to eat. I am hungry. So, anybody who knows that about me would say, uh oh, hangry's coming out. John Pesci, right? So we should probably, hey, Jeannie, we know you're hungry. So we're going to have you go first. We're going to let you step out, grab some food. And then we don't mind if you eat while we're here. Okay,
Mm.
that took how long? But move on next, right? Like I think it's just that's wonderful and it shows that you care about them as a human, as a person. And we all have things going on. We often skip meals sometimes.
And I think this is especially important now, and I use now in a broader sense. I remember one of my clients calling me at one point because they had to lay off a number of people, right? They riffed 30% of their organization. And there was survivor's guilt among the people who were left. And we don't go to church. We as a community, right? As a nation, we don't go to church like we used to. We don't go to the pub down the street like we used to. The places where people have a sense of community are a lot less present in our lives. And so that sense of community is something that people look for at work. And if you're not getting to know people as a whole person, as you've suggested, at work, then people don't have that anywhere. They're going to be craving it. If they're not getting it at your company, they're going to go find a company where they can get it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'll speak for me when I was, climbing the corporate ladder, and it was all about when you and being in human resources, it was all about showing up so professionally at work that nobody knew about my personal life because you don't do that. You don't cross pollinate,
Mm.
which was causing a lot of people in my generation to have this work life balance issue. And I'm going to call them the youngers, those who are entering the work world now, and the millennials. I'm so impressed with them because they weren't tolerating anything but having balance and being able to show up 100% authentically who they are in everything they do. So
Mm.
a lot of us, I'll speak for my age group, we didn't do that. We would put our work hat on when we pulled up in the parking lot, go up the elevator, and at the end of the day we'd rip that off and go be ourselves at the pub like you were saying, right? And so now it's all or nothing. And if you don't offer that opportunity for those people to feel fully comfortable and in an environment where they can show up authentically and have a sense of belonging, they're out. And they do. They're not even giving notice. I'm hearing they're not even giving like a 2 weeks notice. They're just like, bye, I'm done.
And sometimes they tell you, right? Maybe you've heard about the people who have just ghosted their roles, right?
Yeah,
If people are simply disappearing from your organization, the temptation is going to be to say, kids these days, it's you. You have not created a relationship in which they feel any sense of obligation or even
right.
desire to share, right? That really is about trust.
Yep. Yep. And that brings me to what my next one was build accountability and encourage vulnerability,
Mm.
right? So have that environment where everyone feels that they can share themselves. But you can only do that as a leader if you show up that way. So if you show up and share your whole self, then they feel more comfortable and they trust you to be able to do that too. And that's probably this is it. I mean, we have 8 different ways, but if you're not connecting with your staff, they're going to go find someone else who will.
That's
It's
so,
any relationship, personal relationship or work relationship, they have to feel it.
yeah, what's the rule? The rule of vulnerability, right? If you want your team to be vulnerable, you go first.
You always go first. And
All right.
I've coached a lot of leaders who are like, but I can't do that. I have to be the strong one.
Mm.
Even when the place is like falling apart, I have to still believe. You can still believe, but share the truth with your staff. You'd be surprised at how they support you.
Right. Not to mention that clearly shows a misunderstanding of strength. right? Strength is not everything is fine all the time.
Right.
Strength is not I'm 100% focused at work on work and work things all the time. Strength is I can be vulnerable. I can show you my weak under my tender underbelly, and I can also get back to work. I can tell you about what's going wrong, and I can focus on a better future.
Absolutely.
All right. Then why don't I go to number three and then on my list, and you can share number three after that.
All right.
And this is really right in keeping with a lot of what you've shared, Jeannie. Know, respect, and actively support your employees' medium term goals. It's one thing to know that your employee is interested in owning their own company 10 years down the line. It's another thing, they want to be the CEO of a company 10 years down the line. What do they want to accomplish by the end of the year? Where do they want to be in 2 years or 3 years? Helping them reach their goals, giving them assignments that are going to help them grow toward where they want to be, not tomorrow, not next week, but in the medium term. That's going to build a really strong relationship and build tremendous trust. Right? I mean, what's trust but the belief that you've got my interests at heart?
Absolutely. You got my back, right? Hewlett Packard, it used to be, and I think I have it here on my bookshelf. It's a book called The HP Way. And in there it's a whole chapter on let me help you or help me help you. And if you're that's I'm saving my last one for the end. It's about asking staff what they need from you. Ask them and then sit back and listen.
So, what kind of things are going? I mean, I'm imagining some of the objections that you and I have probably both heard to that, right? What do you say to people who say, "Well, if I ask my team what they want from me, how is that not going to give me an exhaustive laundry list of stuff that they want me to do that they should be doing?"
So if we're empowering our staff and you hired them because you know they are experienced professionals who know how to get the job done, empower them to do that and sit back. Now you're pushing me into my last one. I'm going to just go ahead and say it and we'll just go down the list and make sure everybody has it. You have to lead as a high integrity coach and be empathetic to these individuals. You have to show up this day and age as a coach. So that's it. How can I help me help you be fulfill whatever goal you have? So what is it that you need from me? And I've always said a leader creates the process, ideally co-creates it with their staff. Like, how do you think we're going to get there? I have a goal in mind, but it doesn't have to be my way just because I did it already, 3 decades in a row. That is not necessarily the answer, but I have a vision of what it looks like. Let me paint this vision for you. Let's co-create the process. And the leader sits back and pokes a hole in it, peers in, how's it going in this process, and where can I help? So they ask, what do you want to do differently? How do you want to get better at that? And what do you need from me to get there? Coach them through the processes.
Speaking of coaching, one of the things that I share with leaders when they object in that, when they say, I don't want a laundry list of the things that they should be doing that now they're asking me to do, is you're asking, what can I do for you? You're not making a commitment. I'm going to do everything that you ask.
Right.
So if they say, "Hey, I need you to do this," or I need this day off," or whatever, that is an opportunity for coaching potentially, right? It might be an opportunity to say yes. It might be an opportunity to help them understand the bigger picture. And if you resist asking that question because you don't want to hear the answer, that doesn't prevent the truth of the things that they are struggling with.
Right.
It just means that you're clueless.
And you can't be what an ostrich puts their head in the sand. It still exists. The problem is still there. And like I said, it's going to get worse. They're going to create more negativity if you don't communicate.
It,
So absolutely. And a true coach knows that the answers are within the individual. So it's just prying, or I shouldn't use the word prying, but asking questions that generate conversation, two-way communication, where you're co-creating and you're getting to know the person's style, you're getting to know what ticks them off and how they tick, right? I think I'm supposed to
yes.
say it the other way around. And you understand who they are and they understand how you are. And to your point of the manager's going to feel so overwhelmed, you're not. It's actually a lot less overwhelm when you have them work out their problem. You're there as a coach, picking their brain through different questions and having them come up with the answer. And if you are experienced, 30 years experience, you've done it before, you simply say, well, have you thought about this? Or what about this? Or what is another way to look at that? And have them come up with the answers.
Gina, this is so important. And, you reminded me of another piece of conventional unwisdom, right? The unwisdom that says, oh, a leader should say, unless you have a solution, don't bring me a problem.
So you know what that triggers? I'll let you finish your train of thought.
No, go ahead and tell me what that triggers. It'll my
So
my
I
thought will
was I
peak.
was fairly new in my career, and I would go in. I was the head of HR, and I would stomp into the CEO's office, and it was typically after lunch, and I would start telling him about all of the problems that we were having in the organization, and he would literally just point to the door. And I thought, man, this guy's pretty rude, like he's not even talking to me. He's just pointing to the door, like, get out. So I would leave and I would say, wow, okay. So I knew that he had a blood sugar issue. So I would bring him a Diet Coke and I would say, hey, and I'd give him that. And he would seem a little bit less like agitated, but he'd still just like point to the door. So the beauty of me, like I had a lot of mentors that were hardcore, like tough loving me, but it taught me a lot. And I've shared these same experiences with others, and it just really resonates with them. So I finally figured it out. I go, this guy can't be a total turd, right? I mean, he's running this business and he's super fun at the Christmas party. Why is he not telling me what I'm doing wrong? And I
Uh,
thought, well, it's his way to communicate. That's where I really got into like how important communication is, because he's not saying a word. He's just pointing. So I said, it's got to be something. Okay, I believe I must be coming in here and just dumping all my problems on him, trying to throw the monkeys off the HR's back and throw them onto the CEO and thinking he's going to give me the solutions I'm going to walk out with. And I thought, oh my gosh, I figured it out. So I went in there and I said, so let's reset the way that we have meetings. Here's what's going on. But guess what? I have this solution and this solution and this solution and this solution. And he's like, finally, you figured it out, right? And I was like, oh my God, well, you could have told me. He goes, hey, I had to learn the hard way too. So I don't have the leaders that I coach and consult with, I don't have them learn the hard way. I tell them that story. And everyone who's coming to their manager with a problem should have a couple solutions, because it shows that you've thought it out, and confirms the reason they hired you as a professional adult who can get the job done and exceed their expectations.
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm speaking to the people on the front lines, I say, if at all possible, don't bring only the problem, bring some ideas as well. Speaking to
Absolutely.
leaders, I say, never tell people not to come unless they have the solution. Because the hardest problems in your company still exist because the solutions aren't easy. And so if you ever find yourself wondering, why didn't I know about this problem before it became a crisis? And you also are somebody saying, don't bring me a problem unless you've got a solution. Well, there's why. People didn't have a solution and they knew not to bring you the problem. The substitute I often recommend is, don't bring me a problem unless you're willing to be a part of the solution, right? Then the coaching that you're suggesting, that's a great opportunity. Ah, thank you for bringing this problem to my attention. What thoughts do you
Absolutely.
have?
Absolutely. What I love what you just said. What thoughts do you have? Every meeting with every one-on-one, every group meeting, every team meeting, every company-wide meeting, what thoughts do you all have? Ask them. You'd be amazed at what they come up with when you sit back and you listen to the response.
Hmm.
And I can't say this enough. How many people who go through a communication course that I offer who don't get that? They're listening to how am I going to respond? How am I going to respond? And they're not hearing the message that's being said.
Right.
That's probably the biggest pet peeve and the number one reason why employees don't trust their manager because they
Mm.
don't even hear them. They don't even hear what they're saying, right? Listen. You got two ears for a reason and one mouth. Zip it and listen.
Zip it and listen. All
Zip
right.
it and listen.
So Jeannie, the fourth strategy, the fourth tactic that I have for the leaders watching and listening to us right now is to set policies that communicate trust
Yes, yes, yes.
rather than and eradicate all of the policies that communicate mistrust. Now, you
Yes.
and I were both in a community where Angelique Ruers shares things with us. She shared something not long ago. There's a kind of a Q&A, um, ask. Oh gosh, I've lost the ask Abby, right? Rather it was about management. This manager was telling a story about one of her employees who went to her stepfather's funeral and took bereavement leave in order to do that, and was having trouble providing the necessary evidence to HR about the bereavement leave, right? They were looking for an obituary or a death certificate or something like
Mm.
that, right? And she had other things that she used, like the program from the frigging funeral home or something like that. And it became this ongoing point of I won't even call it contention because they both seemed fairly warm about it, right? But the manager and the direct report are both trying to figure out what will constitute evidence in such a way to satisfy HR. And this is just such a broken situation. And it's broken by the policy in the first place. If somebody says, "My stepfather died, I'm going to the funeral," say, "My God, I'm so sorry to hear that. But go be with your loved ones." If you're familiar with the Jewish, what Jews say when someone has died, may his memory be a blessing, and wish them well. And what I hear from some folks in HR who like to toe the party line is, well, then how do we know that they're not taking advantage? And my answer is, you don't.
You don't need
So
to.
what? So that's my
Trust them.
fourth point is really scrutinize your policies and look for the ones that indicate the company's mistrust in the individual people on your team and eradicate all of those policies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I talked to someone the other day who said, I was telling him that I'm not a huge fan of developing employee handbooks that I did for many years because California is very pro employee and compliance issues. That's the number one thing every client I had, a small business clients that I had were, can you create this employee handbook we have to have?
Mm-hmm.
And nobody's even doing that anymore. And I'm just thrilled because nobody wants nobody wants to create those things, but you don't need them. There are some policies you need in place for legal issues that may surface. A lot of disability leaves. You need to make sure that everyone has the proper communication of what the leave entails and what they're entitled to. But you really don't need policies for the sake of policies. Like, yes, show us a death certificate. Who's going to get that? Not to mention, let them go grieve with their family and not worry about it. It's
Yeah,
just
and that
trust
that
them.
goes for sick leave and doctor's notes and
Everything,
all that kind of stuff. Ask
everything.
yourself, does this policy communicate mistrust? And if so, get rid of it.
Yes,
Before we hear Jeannie, your fourth point, I just want to say, if this conversation about HR policies is at all interesting to you, then on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 9th, I will be hanging out with Angela Howard, and we will be talking about the various ways in which HR policies that you take off the shelf may very well be poisoning your culture. So that's a conversation can look forward to, and that I would be eager to have you join. Check me out on LinkedIn to find and register to attend that. So, Jeannie,
yes.
what is number 4
So
on your
I'm going to
list?
go through. Why don't you list your four real quick, and then I'm going to
Okay,
list my three, and I'll touch on the four. So we go over all eight. Go ahead and
great. So
just list them out.
my 4 were conduct weekly one-on-ones that are calendared, sacred, focused on the relationship rather than the business, and that are 30 minutes each with every single one of your direct reports. Require that
Yes.
all the way down for every manager in your organization. Number 2, have running regular performance evaluations. Not just how did you do on this task, but how are you doing? Are you meeting my expectations? Are you exceeding my expectations? Are you not yet meeting my expectations? And what is the gap? That actually, even telling people, here's the gap, you're not meeting my expectations, makes people feel more confident and more trust than an absence of information.
Yes.
Number 3, know, respect, and directly, actively support people's medium term goals. Everybody on your team has places that they want to be, things that they want to know, things that they want to learn, respect that they want to earn over the course of the next year, 2 or 3. Know what those things are and help them get there. And 4, set policies that communicate trust, eradicate policies that communicate mistrust.
Perfect. So I will pick up with number five. I touched on connect with staff personally and professionally, get to know the whole self, which
Ooh.
just piggybacks to what you just said. Have that sacred time with them once a week, get to know them. The more you know about them, the less time it takes to have those conversations. But it has to be genuine. You have to really care. They're going to see right through the crap. If you're just saying things because Jeannie and Aaron told you to say it, you have to really care. Otherwise, they're going to go to a place that they do. Number 6 would have been build accountability and encourage vulnerability. And it starts with you. Be the first one.
I love that
Lead
you
as
said build accountability,
build
because
accountability.
that's just, it's just so global, right? You've got to be accountable. You have to ask people for accountability. Holding people accountable makes them resist it. Build accountability. I love it.
Build accountability, encourage vulnerability. Lead as a high integrity coach and be empathetic. So if they come in and they have a migraine, give them a couple minutes, whatever you got to do, right? Like show that you care. It comes back to that. Like be kind and show you care, right? So that was number 5, 6, and 7. And number 8, treat everyone fairly and consistently.
Ooh.
This is huge. And this is what, for years, for decades, I would ask my CEOs, my executive team, why? Why are you doing that? Because that is now going to get us into legal trouble. And so beyond, I know this conversation is about the Great Resignation and trying to flip that to be more the Great Retention,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And save these folks. But when you are fair and consistent to the best of your abilities, that goes with everything. The one-on-one meetings. Don't give Jeannie an hour when you only gave Aaron 30 minutes. Let's be consistent. People start to know, like, and trust you. I'm not being discriminated against for whatever reason. And it goes a long way to, I mentioned, keeping the company out of trouble and staying in compliance, but it also lets people know that you care. So we go back to that: care, be kind, show up with compassion, and be empathetic.
So, folks, I'm gonna engage Jeannie on this a little bit in a moment. In the meantime, you can see we're about to wrap up. We're winding up. We've delivered 8 now. Feel free to drop any questions, thoughts, comments in the chat. We'd be happy to address some of your thoughts and questions. So, Jeannie, I think there's a chance that you and I disagree here, but I bet we're going to end up being on the same page.
Sure.
Cy Wakeman, I don't know if you're familiar with Cy Wakeman. She writes some wonderful things about excellent management and leadership. She says that the guidance to treat everybody the same is crap. My words, not hers, and I'm with her. So I want to dig into, what do you mean when you say consistency?
Fair and consistent, not the same. I didn't
Yes,
say treat them the same because
right.
everybody is different. So
So
consistently. So example, bonus programs. What works best in an organization is if it's fair across the board, or consistent across the board, or consistent across that level. However you want it, however you create your culture. If you want a culture in your organization where everyone feels that they add the same value, then maybe you, or they're contributing and they're rewarded at the same manner, then maybe you're exactly same exact 20% across the board or whatever it is, right? So it's important to be consistent in your communication, in your style as a manager, and not like, oh, me and Aaron go out drinking beers every Friday night, so he gets a 50% raise this year. And I don't know, I never got to know Jeannie because she has a personal life outside of work and she likes to have beers with her friends. So I'm just going to get 5% because I don't really know her. Okay, we're not being consistent.
right, I love that. So you have to essentially write algorithms, and it's a good idea even to write them down. If X, then Y. And these should be algorithms you'd be happy to have published on the front page of the New York Times,
I love
right?
it.
Not, if I like you, then we go for beers and you get a bigger bonus. But I can think about a friend of mine where he was treated very consistently in a way that makes no sense, right? He was on the president's list of salespeople in his national company, and he was required to come in every day from 8 to 8:30 to make phone calls, despite the fact that it actually interfered with his ability to sell. Right now, if you are struggling in your sales, then we need you to come in from 8 to 8:30 and make sure that we have the opportunity to supervise you a little bit, to tune up your approach, to help you learn how to be more successful. And if you're really succeeding, if you're bringing in the best numbers on the team, then we're not going to have as stringent requirements of you, right?
I think you've locked
That's an
up, Aaron.
algorithm. What's that? I don't. I guess we're having a little bit of a misalignment
I just got a
technically.
notice saying that it looks like it was locked up and
Oh,
to be patient. I don't know if you can hear
got
me
it.
at this moment, but
I
Aaron's
can.
definitely locked up. I'm not
Yeah.
on my end,
Well,
and it looks like it's doing
so
to
hopefully
standby.
you're
We're trying
hearing
to
me okay.
restore the issue.
So what I was saying is that to treat people consistently can include, if you
So
are
if you can
meeting
hear me, I'm
these.
going to keep talking so you're not just looking at my me sitting here. What Aaron was saying is that consistently having people come in the same hours, 8:30 to 8:30 at night or what have you, when it doesn't make sense for their role, I'm 100% on board with that. It doesn't make sense. So don't be consistent, and I think that's the thing about being fair and consistent, but not treating people exactly the same.
Oh, I love it, Jeannie. I hope you can hear me now. We've been plagued a little bit with technical challenges, and we've gotten through 8.
What I might go ahead and do, it looks like we're locked up, and I don't think this is still live. And I'm going to go ahead and close out. If anybody wants to reach me, I can be at Jeannie. I can be found at Jeannie, Jeannie, at dynamismleadership.com. Feel free to send me an email. And this was fun, Aaron, but I think technology has told us that it is done. So you all have a wonderful day and a great weekend.
Well, and just in
Bye.
case you can hear me, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you on Tuesday if you care to join us for the fact and some discussion around that off the shelf policies are very likely toxic to your culture. So we'll give you some ways to weed out those policies that may be toxic and encourage you as leaders to be fully involved in setting your policies and your procedures. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Aaron Schmuckler, one of the co-founders at the S Works, where we help you build a culture that is one where profits and people both thrive. Thank you so much.